Hey guys, Ali Duzette here, and today we have to talk about this big question. I've gotten dozens of messages about this. Did October 9th of 2024 open up the 7 years of tribulation? Okay, this question is really prompted by this video that I took a little screenshot of the thumbnail right here, Revelation in the Stars on October 9th, 2024. This was uploaded by somebody named Ghosts619, and I'm really not familiar with them, and this is their first video that I've ever watched, so I'm not gonna claim that I'm like an expert on them or anything like that. But this video, it is worth watching, I think. Like if you want to, I'll put a link for that below. But they make a lot of claims based on astronomical conjunctions and astrological symbolism. Uh, I think it's worth watching the video for yourself, but I'm going to walk us through the overall claims because I felt like the video had, high production value as far as like lots of pictures of planets zooming in from over there and stuff like that, but it was a little hard to keep track of. And I've actually watched it maybe 7 times now. And many of the parts I've watched over and over and over again to just get it slow enough that I could understand what he was saying and kind of mentally place it. And I used all of those times that I watched it to make you this presentation where we're gonna hopefully discuss what they're saying in a clearer way and a more easily understood way. And we're going to talk about some things that I think are accurate and the things that I think perhaps are not so accurate. So ready, set, go. In this video, they argue that, Jesus, the Bible claims that Jesus will be gone for 2,000 years and then come back and then reign for 1,000 years, which I think is a widely accepted thing. But they believe that Jesus left the earth in 31 AD, and will return to reign in 2031 AD, which places the tribulation starting in 2024. Okay, so that part of the idea really hinges on, did Jesus get resurrected in 2031? Or could it have been a different year than that? I mean, could he have been resurrected in 2034? Like, a lot of this hinges on, when did Jesus actually be born? When did he actually get crucified and resurrected? And so depending on your personal take on the actual timing there, you may have a different take than them. I had not 31 AD was not really the year that was on my radar for Jesus's resurrection, but they have reasons for thinking that it was that year, and really no one can really prove what year it was. We just know it was around that time. So we'll come back to that. Now, they verify this using a number of different dates, so I'll walk you through it. They say that this is all verified by the 1406 BC Jordan River crossing. I believe they're referring to Moses. The 598 BC capture of Jerusalem under Nebuchadnezzar. The 31 AD crucifixion. A 692 AD construction of the Dome of the Rock. The 1535 AD order to rebuild Jerusalem, and the 1948 AD formation of Israel. So this is a big piece of their math. The fig tree prophecy in Matthew 24 says that this generation who lives to see Israel become a nation will not pass away before the tribulation begins. And I don't know. I mean, people have interpreted Matthew 24 in a number of different ways. So I'm not sure that you can always, it may not mean exactly what they think that it means. That's what I'm trying to say. But if that is what it's referring to, if it is referring to Israel becoming a nation, then they're turning to the book of Psalms, Psalms 90:10, which says that a generation is about 70 years or 80 years long. So their math is that 1948 was the formation of Israel as a state, and that 80 years plus that equals 2028. And then they argue that 2028 is therefore the destruction of the abomination of desolation, which they are arguing is the Dome of the Rock. And sorry, I have to open this for my child. It's very crunchy. Okay, here you go, honey. I need you to eat this at the table or outside. Go have a little picnic, please. Do not eat this in here. Get out of here, please. That is too yucky. Oh my gosh. Okay, go eat it outside. I'm sorry. Okay. So 1948 plus 80 equals 2028. And And so they argue that in 2028, we will see, they think that Matthew 24 is discussing the Dome of the Rock, and that it will be destroyed in 2028, and that would put 2028 and the destruction of the abomination of desolation as the midpoint of the tribulation. If 2028 is the midpoint of the tribulation, then the tribulation begins in fall of 2024, like the autumn of 2024, which is now. So this is one of the relevant verses they cite. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that the summer is nigh. So likewise you, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things shall be fulfilled. So this is the idea. This generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. And so they're saying, okay, the generation that has seen the creation of Israel as a state is not going to all die away until everything happening in Matthew 24 takes place. So I don't know, interesting. I feel like I could see it. Okay. They talk about Daniel 12. And this is one of the relevant verses that they cite. From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, they're arguing again, the Dome of the Rock, there shall be 1,290 days. 1,290 days. Okay, blessed is he that waiteth and comes to the 3,305 and 30 days. Okay, so then they say that we can't just take it by days, we have to actually calculate it as years, and say that 598 BC is when the daily sacrifices were taken away. We add the 1290 to it, and that puts us at 692 AD, which is when the Dome of the Rock was constructed. Okay, from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, there shall be 1,290 days, and then the abomination that maketh desolate shall be set up. Okay, so he's saying that what's happening, the daily sacrifices were taken away, 1,290 years later, we had the construction of the Dome of the Rock. And then they're saying that we add another, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. Okay, so they're saying another 692 plus 1335 puts us in 2028. Of course, if you do that math, no, it does not. It puts us at 2027, but they were like, it's 2028. So I'm like, okay. But I guess it just depends. I guess it depends also on the counting of like how we're kind of counting years and days, because this is the time, like, I think they count the new year from Rosh Hashanah, which just took place in October. Like they're counting years a little differently than, we do today. And so anyways, we're dealing with 2027, 2028. So these are some reasons why they think that 2028 is the midpoint of the tribulation. So then it all comes down to this. So if 2028 is the midpoint of the tribulation, halfway earlier than that is going to put us in 2024, right? 3.5 years before that, here we are. And so, okay. So pause, because I didn't write about this, but what's coming into my mind right now is just that, the biblical New Year starts on 1 Nisan, which was the date of the April 8th eclipse this year. And then this, I don't know, the high holy days and like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur kind of happen like half a year later. And so I'm wondering if that's where we're getting like that this is the half year anyway. Okay. Astronomical and astrological claims that they make for October the 9th. So they say that on October the 9th, Uranus will be within 4 degrees of the Seven Sisters constellation, the Pleiades. So the Pleiades constellation is in the zone of Taurus, and Uranus is at 26 degrees of Taurus. So I couldn't find the exact degrees that the Pleiades are at, but this is at least in the realm of possibility. They argue that this is significant because the Seven Sisters can represent the 7 stars, the 7 spirits, the 7 churches, 7 lampstands. We're like all the stuff in Revelation that deals with sevens, like that's kind of significant if this is an accurate, prophecy. Then they cite Revelations 4:3. And one sat on the throne, and he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone. So then they argue that the one sitting on the throne that looks like a jasper and a sardine stone is Jupiter, the planet. And that Jupiter does look like a sardine stone. And they put up a bunch of pictures of sardine stones. And yeah, they look like what we know that Jupiter looks like. Kind of swirly, kind of orangey and tan and swirls. So then they claim that this is Jupiter in Gemini, and that Jupiter will be standing still in the Golden Gates on the 8th day of Tabernacles, and that the but anyways, I was like Googling this all up. The Golden Gates are in Taurus, but Jupiter right now is at 21 degrees of Gemini. And so I pulled up some maps of all the constellations to kind of see if I could get an idea of where Jupiter actually is in like the map of the total night sky. Like, what if it is in Gemini, but where it is in Gemini, like if you look at it as like a picture, if it looks like it's close to the Golden Gates in Taurus. But I am just like not sure that it is. Like Jupiter is not in Taurus, and Jupiter's not even that close to Taurus. It's 21 degrees into Gemini. So I don't know. I could be wrong on this, like, and I'm not sure exactly how they are calculating this, but my calculations are not aligning with this claim. So I don't really know what to make of that. Now, they also claim that Mars starts retrograding now, and it does not. Mars is not going retrograde until December the 6th. So in the video, the video does kind of use their words a little interestingly because they just say like after October the 9th, Mars will be going retrograde, which makes it kind of sound both immediate and also like less immediate, you know? And so oh, but the reality is that Mars is currently in Cancer and it is not going retrograde until December. And when it does go retrograde, it will be going through Leo and Cancer. And so all of the claims that are being made about Mars being in Gemini and circling through the two twins of Gemini are like completely not accurate from any of the calculations that I have done. Like, I do not know how they got that, but it does not seem accurate whatsoever. Oh, hello. Hi, baby. I need you to go play. So anyway, this part of the video, I was just like, this is not true at all. Like, there is no reason, like, I don't understand how they got there. And so yeah, I don't know. Like, I will hold space for them to I mean, like maybe they have a good explanation of what they're doing, but I did not understand it and I did not think that it made sense. They made a lot of claims about how this is a once in a 5,000 years kind of situation. Like Mars is doing this special thing that it only does it once in every 5,000 years, but Mars is not doing that. And so I don't know what is going on. Okay, they claimed that Saturn is being washed in the water from Aquarius's bowl, and they had like a little image of Saturn in the water being poured from Aquarius. So Aquarius, he sounds like a water sign, but he's an air sign. And Aquarius is holding a bowl of water and pouring that water out, and the water does head in the direction of Pisces. And Saturn is currently in Pisces. Um, so and so part of their claims is that Saturn was in the bowl of water from Aquarius during the eclipse. And so I've never like heard a lot about Aquarius's bowl of water being poured and like where that is in the zodiac, but assuming that it's at about 14 degrees of Pisces, yes, Saturn was at 14 degrees of Pisces on the April 8th eclipse, which did start off this biblical new year, which is another big thing that they talk about. And Saturn retrograde is currently at 14 degrees for October the 9th. So yes, we do have this interesting Saturn 14 degrees connection, if that is truly underneath the bowl of water from Aquarius, which I could not verify. I was like looking at all these maps and I need to find like a really good, like much better map of the whole night sky separated into degrees. Like that's what I need. And I don't even know where to find it. I was Googling looking for something that would suit my purposes and I couldn't find it. So if you have one, I would love a link to that. But anyway, so I don't know if that's accurate or not, but they They did say that Saturn was going to station direct 40 days after October the 9th, and they said about 40 days, which is better, I guess, but that would put it stationing direct on November 18th. Saturn is actually stationing direct on November 15th, which is close, but it's not 40 days. You know, like if we're going to put a lot of meaning into the 40 days concept, like it's just simply not 40 days, you know? And so, like, I get that it's close to 40 days and like 37 days is still like a bunch of days. It's like pretty close to 40 days, and yet it is not 40 days. So I don't really know what to make of this claim. They say that this is a representation of the judgment being poured out of a bowl or a cup onto the people. So Aquarius like pouring out the judgment with that bowl of water onto Saturn. And I said he's being washed in the water, but it doesn't necessarily mean washing. Although, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the earth is supposed to get cleansed. Like that's what the tribulation is all about. It's about cleansing the earth. So maybe it is being washed. And I haven't even made videos yet about all these hurricanes, but I've been like reading about them full time. Um, but talk about powerful washing, you know, the kind of washing that nobody wants to be washed that way. Um, not to say that those are judgments, you know, like not to say that these different hurricanes are because like God's judging the people or something like that. Like that's not what I'm saying, but just to say that um I don't know, this idea of washing as a tribulation experience, I guess I could see it, you know. Saturn does in like astrological terms, Saturn is the god of karma. That's like the quote unquote title of Saturn, and this concept of the law of the harvest. So it is an interesting concept to have Saturn at this 14 degrees of Pisces, representing the law of the harvest and like God symbolically washing out our harvests that were not good enough, you know, the harvest that was not right, like having to pay the piper, having to really come to terms with what we've done wrong and like stand in the flow of the water of God and see if we can stand or not. Interesting concept. Um, but again, the math, I'm like not 100% sure about it in the context of their claims. So they also talk about Revelation 12, 3 through 5. So this is the scripture. I'm going to read it to you. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, who was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,263 days. So, okay, so he argues that this is a discussion of the Draconid meteor shower because the dragon constellation in the sky covers a third of the zodiac, a third part of the stars of heaven, and the Draconid meteor shower, it does happen every year in October. He argues that it's very unusual for it to happen during the high holy days and like the solemn assembly with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so I did not verify that, but the Draconids are happening like as of me giving this video right now, and they started on October the 6th. They're going through October the 10th. So like, yeah, there are Draconid actions right now. But again, they do happen every year. I'm not sure how they always line up with the Jewish holidays. Draco, the dragon, with its 7-star crown. Remember, he's talking about like 7 crowns. It has 7 stars there. It is right next to Virgo, the Virgin in the zodiac, like the Virgin Mother. And so they're arguing that this little section, she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, is a reference to Isaiah 66 that talks about a woman bringing forth a man-child. And in that scripture, if you go check it out, it talks about like, can a nation be born all at once? And so in this video that I'm talking about, they're claiming that this whole thing is a reference to Israel and its formation in 1948, like a nation was born all at once. Like, surprise, here you are. You have a nation now. You have the people, you have the land, like here you are, surprise. And so anyway, I don't know. Do the Draconids, like, how rare is it for the Draconids to align with the High Holy Days? I truly don't know. And the woman, I mean, one thing that does strike me is that we talk about the 1,203 score days here as being I believe the beginning of sorrow. Am I adding that correctly? This should be 3.5 years, right? But why don't we count these days as years? Like, if we're going, like, earlier they were making a big deal about how we got to add the days as if they are years, but like, if we're gonna do that, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so here are some more claims. They have a big bunch of claims about the four horsemen of the apocalypse from Revelation. And their claims are that we have the moon in Sagittarius is the white horse, I think, with the moon sitting at the tip of the bow of Sagittarius. And this is like true. And at that time, the moon was at 26 degrees of Sagittarius. However, in the video, they claim this only happens every 7 years, but the moon is on a 28-day cycle. The moon is, I mean, it's in 26 degrees of Sagittarius like every 28 days. And I get that it will be at different phases of the moon, depending, like, obviously, when the moon is in Sagittarius and it's Sagittarius season, then we're going to be dealing with a new moon. And so they argued that the shape of the moon is really important. So I'm wondering if that's the kind of thing that they're talking about, like every 7 years, because the moon's in at 26 degrees of Sagittarius like all the time. It really is. So I I'm not really sure how they are defining this. I'm not sure it only happens every 7 years, but I will hold space for them to be correct and that maybe they're using a different calculation than me. They argue that the black horse from Revelation 6:5 right here is Venus in Libra because it talks about how the rider holds a scale in his hands, and they argue that Venus is in Libra right now. They do quote this really interesting verse that I had never like thought about in this context, 2 Peter 1:16, which talks about how they refer that they need to do their thing until the morning star rises in your hearts, and the morning star is Venus. So I'll have to make a whole video about that because this is a really interesting concept that Venus has to rise in your heart for like Christian reasons. But anyway, the point is their whole argument is based on Venus being in Libra, but Venus is not in Libra. Venus is in Scorpio right now, so I just like don't know what to make of that. And again, maybe if we looked at where Venus is on the total map of the whole night sky, maybe we would see that it is in Scorpio, but if you looked at it from a certain direction, it would look like it was in Libra, but the fact remains that Venus is not in Libra. So I don't know, I don't understand how they got there. Then finally, once again, the red horse and the other horse, the pale horse, I think, they are claiming that both of those are represented by Mars going around through Gemini. And they're arguing that instead of Gemini being Castor and Pollux, that it's Hercules and Apollyon because Apollyon is mentioned in the Bible as like a bad guy energy. And so they're arguing that Mars is right now going retrograde through one twin and then going around and ending up with the other twin, going from Hercules to Apollyon, just like in the Bible, Apollyon. I have never heard that, but that doesn't mean anything. It just means that maybe I have just never been exposed to Gemini being Hercules and Apollyon. I don't know what to say about that. But once again, Mars is not in Gemini right now. Mars is not actually going from one twin to the other right now, and it is not going to take 5 months to do so. Like, all of their math there is not correct, and I do not understand how they got it. And like, again, maybe I'm just not understanding the way that they're looking at it. And I tried to look at this chart from a sidereal perspective because I read an earth-based chart, like a tropical chart, where you look from the earth up and then see the sky from the earth's perspective. And I thought, okay, well, maybe if we look at it from a sidereal perspective, it will look like it's like things are going differently. But from what I could find, that does not appear to be the case. So I'm like not really sure what this is, but like that is not what is happening, which is a full half of their four horses that are supposedly linked to this placement, but that's not actually happening. So this is the actual chart, and they mentioned this time specifically, 6:40 a.m. at Tel Aviv in Israel is when the sun rose. So you see the sun right there, right next to the ascendant. This is the horizon, and yes, the sun is rising right at that time. And so this is over Israel, but just look, I mean, like this is Venus in Scorpio, and Venus is not in Libra. This is Libra up here, and Venus is not even that close, right? And then over here we have Mars at the midheaven in Cancer, and it is not retrograde, and it is not going retrograde. This is Gemini, so this is like a little bit of a long ways, and Mars is not there. So I just like don't know what to make of this. Jupiter is in Gemini and not in Taurus. This is Taurus. The golden gates of the ecliptic are like over here, and Jupiter is not close to that. And so I'm just really curious how they got these assumptions. And it kind of reminds me of like my big question as I was watching it before I did all of this math, because I'm like listening to it and I'm like, okay, this sounds cool. Of course, when he said that Mars was going retrograde, I was like, wait a minute, it's not. What are they talking about? And then they said Venus is in Libra. And I'm like, wait a minute, Venus is not in Libra right now. But even so, I just thought like, who is the guy that like looked that like found all these connections? I would be really interested to talk with him because I think it does take a really remarkable mind to read such biblical prophecy and then make these kinds of connections to the night sky, even though I kind of disagree with a lot of what was assumed. So anyway, I'm like really not sure, how they got a lot of their conclusions because it is not in alignment with what is actually happening in the night sky at this time. So for the
Yeah. Hey, baby, I'm recording. Let's hold on, honey.
so some further claims from this video were that Zechariah, so the rest of the video is about Zechariah 5, and this part of the video starts at minute 23. So this is like, I think about a half-hour video. So if you just want to talk about the nuclear war stuff, go to minute 23. He talks about Zechariah 5 being a prophecy of nuclear war. He ties it in with Revelation chapter 6 and talks about the possibility of the nuclear blast being the scroll or the scroll being a nuclear blast, like vice versa. And I don't know, I felt like, yeah, this could be. But I kind of thought everybody looks at Revelation prophecy and a lot of Old Testament prophecies as being representations of possible nuclear war. So for me, I was just kind of like, yes, this is interesting, but it still depends on some different kinds. Oh, it still depends on different kinds of interpretations of different words. Like they'll say your Bible says this, but if you read it a different way, we could also translate it as that. So I don't know. So overall, I think the total video is really interesting and it makes an interesting case. And I think it could be mostly or partially accurate in some respects. But it depends on a few things. Did Jesus really leave the earth in 31 AD? Or did he go in 33 AD or 34 AD? Whose calculations are correct? And I truly don't know. Like, I truly do not know who is correct with that. If Jesus returns in 2031, then the tribulation does need to start in late 2024 if our understandings of these biblical prophecies are correct. But if Jesus is going to return in 2034, then the tribulation is going to start in 2027. And again, like that 2027, 2028 number was pretty significant in those calculations earlier on that I talked about. So I don't know, is that the beginning of the tribulation or the midpoint of the tribulation? I mean, I guess we'll kind of figure it out now. I didn't cite anything about this in this video, but you can go read Matthew 24 for yourself, where Jesus talks about the beginning of sorrows, which is the first half of the tribulation. And so are we entering the beginning of sorrows, or will the beginning of sorrows be happening in 2027? I mean, I think we can just kind of like see how it unfolds a little bit. Like it should become obvious at some point, and it should not take forever to become very obvious where we're at in the timeline. I'll get back to that in like one little second. I do believe that we can suppose that the tribulation is near. Like if it didn't start on October the 9th of 2024, then it should be starting at some point soon. We may have as many as several years before it begins. But even so, years are not very long. They feel long in the moment, but they're not. Like you can look back over the many years that you have lived and say like, okay, this went faster than I thought. I do think this is still a momentous year in terms of divine signs in the heavens. Of course, the April 8th eclipse, the September 17th to October 2nd eclipse cycle, like we've been talking about it. There's like big stuff happening, and I think it is worth noting that and taking that very seriously because I think it is serious. Does it portend the immediate opening of the beginning of sorrows and the tribulation? This video made an interesting case, but was it a truly compelling case for me? Um, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say I'm not opposed to the video. I do hold space for that they may have used different calculations and different understandings of how the planets are moving than I do, I guess, but I don't know. We'll just have to see. Remember that all those Mars calculations are just not correct. Like I'm holding space for them to have a good explanation for it, but like I literally cannot see a way that this could be correct. With Venus looking like it might be in Libra, maybe it might look like it's in Libra, depending on how you look at it, like through a telescope or something, but it's not in Libra, it's in Scorpio, right? So so I don't know. And of course, Jupiter is not in the Golden Gateway right now, so I just like truly don't know. Again, maybe they're looking at the stars in a different way than I look at it, but I just don't know. As far as the nuclear stuff, once again, I think it makes sense, but I thought everybody interpreted many of the scriptures in Revelation to be talking about nuclear war, so like I'm just taking it as another verification that we're probably going to see nuclear war before the second coming. Right? Like that only makes sense. I can't even imagine not, right? So anyway, my conclusion is that this is really interesting. I think the video is worth watching. I think it's worth praying about. And considering the concepts, I think a number of the math is wrong. A number of the astronomical calculations are simply not correct. And maybe they are using different calculations than I understand. Um, I do think that this exact Day of Atonement, which starts on Friday, October 11th and extends through Saturday, October the 12th, I think that that is very, very meaningful. I spoke a couple of days ago about how this is a potent time for repentance, and so I think that it is a good time to repent. I think it's worth honoring the possibility that we are about to enter the beginning of sorrows. Uh, will we enter it this fall? I don't know. Like maybe we will, maybe we won't. It really depends on when did Christ actually experience the crucifixion and resurrection? And there are people that argue for a number of different years in that window, and I think we're just going to have to figure it out as we go a little bit. When it comes to the tribulation, I wanted to tell this story. I used to teach gospel principles at Sunday school, and when I had to teach about the millennium and the tribulation, I was totally floored. So we only ever had like one or two people in gospel principles. So gospel principles is the class where brand new people come and they've never gone to Sunday school before, they go to gospel principles. And just so that there wouldn't be like one person in the class, we would always just have like a bunch of the old guard come to the class just to be supportive and to be there. And so there were, I don't know, 12 to 20 people in the room probably. And so we were talking about the tribulation, and so many people were arguing that they thought we were in the tribulation. They were like, Jesus could come tomorrow. We're in the tribulation right now. And I'm sitting there like, what are you talking about? This was in the age before Netflix, this was, 2010-ish. So I don't think we even had like smartphones. I don't think we even had like iPads. I think I got my first iPad like the following a couple years later. And so, but anyway, I was just like, we're not going to be watching TV through the tribulation. Like, we're not going to be like eating Cafe Rio through the tribulation. Like, I just don't think that. But they were like really sure, like Jesus is coming is around the corner. There's no way that there's 7 more years till he comes. Of course, that was 2010. Where are we at now? 2024. So guess what? Jesus was more than 7 years away. And frankly, today, I think he is more than 7 years from today. I do think that. But that's just my opinion. So this is from Matthew 24. Okay. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down and take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days be shortened, and except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Okay. When I remember reading that as a kid, like 12 years old, like reading Matthew 24 and being like, wow, the tribulation sure sounds intense. All flesh will die, except that God shortens the days. Like, are we in the tribulation, in this exact moment? Maybe not. I have to say that I watched The Princess Diaries on Disney Plus last night with my kids, and I'm just not sure that that's going to be like a thing that most people can do during the actual tribulation. Now, of course, how every kind of time period works is when it first starts, it's not like you wake up one day and everything is different. We kind of ease into these changes in epoch or in age, I guess you could say. And and so I don't know, maybe a door is opening with this Yom Kippur and with this October 9th, the stuff that they're talking about, and maybe we will see more robustly another 6 months from now how we are in a tribulation. But I also want to honor that there have been times throughout history that have really been terrible. I mean, think about the Great War, right? World War One, people were terrified, like the entire planet was affected. And then we had World War Two. And I think that there were probably a bunch of people that thought, okay, this is it. This is it. And my mom, I have not read this book, When Christ and His Saints Slept, but the book, When Christ and His Saints Slept, is a reference to this time that took place in the 1100s in England when, I'm sorry, I'm not like a super historian, but I think it was Empress Maud and Henry Plantagenet got into this massive fight, and their King Stephen was involved. I like can't remember all the details, but I do remember that here, let me escape from my presentation and find the thing I was reading about it because it was like pretty fascinating. Oh, I think I X'd out of it. That's okay. Um, this term, when Christ and his saints slept, came from this moment. It came from this old Norman text from the 1100s, where they said that the people were so wicked, everybody was doing whatever they wanted. The king was just letting them get away with it. There was this huge, like, civil strife all through the whole land. People were killing each other. Anybody with money was captured by people with more money and tortured. And all the people in the land said that Christ must be sleeping. Like Christ must be sleeping, his saints must be sleeping. If God was awake, he would stop this. And I think we can point to many other times throughout history that people probably felt that same way. That like, if God really cared about this, he would stop this. Like, how is this happening? And so, just to honor that, the world has seen some ugly times, and so it will be. I think it will be really something when those ugly times are so ugly that they qualify to be the tribulation prior to the second coming. So, okay, that's what I have to say. Any more slides? Nope. Okay, well, I'll link that other video below. I hope you go check it out if you want to. Thanks for hanging out. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope you guys have a good day.